Okay. So thank you so much for the wonderful introduction. And yes, this talk is going to be quite interactive and I will need your help. I'm going to ask you to type things in the chat from time to time. Is that okay? Well, actually, let's try it now. Type in the chat, okay, if you agree to type in the chat when I ask you to. Hopefully, you're okay. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much for agreeing. All right, let's start. Do you have bosses who think they know best and tell you what to do? Well, type in the chat boss if you have that kind of boss. Also, type in the chat boss if you have experienced the top being in charge and power trickles down. So let's see. Do we have bosses like that who think they know best and just tell you what to do? Or you have experienced the top being in charge and power trickle down? Wow. Okay. Just two of you. That is quite unusual. Okay, there are a few. All right. Now, people nowadays say that leadership occurs at every level. What does that actually mean? And thanks to a pandemic, globally, we're introduced to remote working and or hybrid model now. How are we supposed to lead in this remote and hybrid world? I'm so glad that you decided to join me in this session. These are the questions that we'll explore today. Welcome. Hi, my name is Mun-Wai. You can also call me MW. I have close to 25 years of corporate and agile experience. I first became a manager more than 20 years ago in a 2,000 person company. And in the next 20 plus years, I have led people with and without an actual management title in companies ranging from startups with less than 100 people to global enterprises with over 20,000 employees. Now, towards the end of my corporate career, I was promoted to chief of staff. So I have worked at every level of a company except being a CEO. And interestingly, I have employees who have followed me to whichever company I worked in. So I guess I must have done something right. You'll learn more about me as the talk continues. So today I'll be sharing through my personal stories, the principles and key takeaways of what I have learned agile leadership is and is not. So let's get right into it. Now, when I asked people what they think leadership is, a lot of them said, be the best person to do the job, and my people are supposed to follow and emulate me, or I get to tell people what to do and correct them when they're doing it wrong, or educate them so they can be just like me. Then they can be promoted like me. Now, the most common that I heard during the pandemic is holding the team accountable, driving them to produce, monitoring them to make sure they don't slack off. Well, what about you? What do you think leadership is? Well, let me tell you my story. When I first graduated from engineering graduate school, I was hired to be the systems engineer to modernize a 25-year-old satellite communications system. Now, it was a government project, and my boss was a program manager. Now, for US government projects, the program manager is the boss because they got all the money from the customers, which is the US government. So they hold the budget, the timeline, the relationship with the customer. And my boss put a team of people together with various skills, and we worked together to complete this monstrous task. Now, for me, I was responsible for the entire engineering architecture and technical direction, the hardware, firmware, and software. And I also went with him to meet with our customers to give them periodic updates. Now, I was brand new to the working world, and the people whom I work with have been working in the same industry for over 20 years. Now, in my newbie's eyes, my job and my boss's job didn't have too much difference. I mean, yes, he had the money, he held the budget, but that's about it. He and I met with the customer together. I gave him our estimates and timelines and the risk and the mitigation plan. So when I asked my boss about it, he told me that if I truly wanted to know the difference, he would invite me to attend every single meeting that he attended. Oh boy, were my eyes opened. Not only did I realize what other things and tasks he did, but the most important lesson was how he treated his team. He cared about his team. Well, looking back, it's easy to see that my boss has built a psychologically safe environment, though that was before Dr. Amy Edmondson started to popularize the term psychological safety. It's an environment where people feel free to express themselves without the fear of humiliation or retribution. Otherwise, I would have received reprimands when I asked him what the differences were between our jobs because I didn't see too much difference. Oh, actually, I am curious if you agree with me on that. So type challenge in the chat if you think that could have been perceived as me challenging my boss about his job, even though I was just truly curious. So if you agree with me, type challenge in the chat. Let's see if you actually agree with me. So you didn't think there was a challenge? Okay, that is interesting. Um, well, my boss didn't treat it as such either. And I felt camaraderie with my much older and more senior colleagues. And I felt included in the team even though I was fresh out from graduate school. We supported each other. We never stopped asking questions or offering ideas. And we even admitted mistakes and weaknesses. And when we disagree with each other, we debated constructively and we figured out a way to make decisions amidst our disagreement. Oh, when I say we, I meant everyone on the team, including my boss. Also, the team could tell him their frustrations around the things that blocked their progress, and he would work hard to remove those blockers. The project finished on time and under budget, a first in the US government's recent history. They even gave us a plaque in the shape of a California to congratulate us. Now, the thing is, I've never wanted to work with the US military or the US government. That company had a commercial branch, so after the project was completed, I told my boss I wanted to work in the commercial sector, and he found me a system engineer position on the commercial side. I was excited to finally start my commercial career. Soon after my transfer, I found that my new boss monitored and questioned my every move. Now, since I was still a newbie, I only had 2 years of work experience under my belt. I was told I should keep my ideas and opinions to myself and leave them to the more senior people. When I wanted more information, for example, why we're doing what we're doing or the context of the project and other information about the project, not only was I not giving those pieces of information, I was told that it was not my job, that I should mind my own business. Well, basically, I was reprimanded for opening my mouth. My new boss didn't only treat me that way, she treated others the same. And that's vastly different from the environment where I came from, where the colleagues actually worked together as a team. So I talked to my old boss about the situation. He was able to transfer me out of the manager and got me to report to her boss directly instead. Her boss wasn't that much better. While he didn't monitor my every move, he did ensure that I minded my own business. And when he gave me feedback, he would sometimes include my gender and my ethnicity in his comments. Something like, as an Asian, you should have, or as a woman, you should know. And he also accused me of wrongdoings that he himself regularly did. Now, what kind of work environment would you say that is? Type in the chat normal if you think that's a completely normal working environment. I mean, this is just what you experience every single day. If you don't think so, type in toxic in the chat. And I want to see how many of you think that this is a normal working environment versus a toxic working environment. Oh, okay. All right.
Mun-Wai, just
Yeah.
a quick one. I'm not sure if your screen sharing is off. I'm not sure if you're
I
doing
am
that intentionally or not.
It's intentional. I'm not sharing any slides while I'm telling
Brilliant.
my and then I
Just
will
to
be
double
telling
check.
everything. So I'm glad that you all think that it's a toxic working environment. Well, everyone on that team was on edge. There was no camaraderie. We spent as much effort in protecting ourselves every day as doing the actual work. At that time, I wondered if that's the difference between commercial projects where everything is cutthroat and everyone is looking up for themselves, and government projects where once the deal is signed, you have been chosen among all the competitors and competition is over. And I wondered if it's possible to create similar environments in the commercial world. Now, after 4 years as a systems engineer, I decided that I like dealing with people more than dealing with technical problems. For me, technical problems always have a solution sooner or later, and the solution will always work under the same conditions. Well, there's no such thing when dealing with people. The solution for people's problem are never the same, even when it's the same people. I mean, the me from yesterday is different from the me today and will be different from the me tomorrow. We change. We all do. So to me, that's more fun. And so remembering my first boss, I became a program manager. I know enough by then from working in the commercial world that program manager are not the boss of everyone. No one reports to the program manager, unlike my first boss where the entire team reported to him. But that's not what I was after. I wanted to see if I could find such enjoyable working environments like what I experienced under my first boss, while producing delightful products to the customer in a timely fashion. When I couldn't find such environments, I wondered if I could help foster them. I know I wasn't the boss, but I thought I could at least foster that for the people whom I worked with. I mean, I want people to be excited and motivated to go to work instead of dreading to go to work. I mean, type in the chat, excited, if you like to be excited about your work. And don't type in the chat if you're like, I don't want to be excited about my work. Okay. Exactly. Thank you. Well, then, you know, when people are eager and excited to go to work every day, that means they're doing things that are challenging and rewarding and they like the people that they work with. In other words, they're allowed to grow and operate to their full potential, and they value and embrace the teammates' differences. So over the next 20 plus years in the corporate world, I went after anything or any group that hindered the team from working effectively together to produce a product that delights the customers. Now, starting from engineering, I realized that there were outside forces hindering them from working effectively together. So I chased after those outside forces to see if I could eliminate them or at least revise them so the team could work better together. Over time, I ended up working in all the disciplines within product development: product management, product user experience, technical writing, engineering, operations, and in companies that have offices around the world. Now, even with the entire global product development team, there's still outside forces that hinders them. And that's when I started messing around in the executive management team, HR, finance, and even facilities. I'll talk more about what those outside forces are later. So, what have I learned? I found that whenever there's an enjoyable working environment, whether it's completely in person or a distributed environment, that is a pre-COVID term for hybrid, or even a completely remote environment, it's because leadership and management use a people-first approach. Write in the chat, people first. And why people first? Because when you release the potential of your staff, they will release the potential of the business. Let me say it again. When you release the potential of your staff, they will release the potential of the business. Using a people-first approach to design work, the where, when, and how, employees will be more engaged. Engaged employees are more innovative, they focus more on business value than output, and they stay at the organization longer. They're also healthier. Engaged employees are what allow the company to be flexible, nimble, and agile enough to respond, react, and adapt to this increasingly complex and fast-changing 21st century that we're in today. Now, before we continue, I am curious, how many of you have gone through some kind of agile transformation? Type in the chat agile if you have gone through some sort of agile transformation. Either a company-wide agile transformation or your department. All right. That's quite a few of us. Good. That's quite a number of us. Yet, very few of us have seen the far-reaching effect that it promised. And why is that? While Agile is spreading out of engineering and IT to other parts of the company like HR, sales, and marketing, Agile is not a goal. Agile is an inspirational journey of how to get from where you are to the vision and reality of where you aspire to be. Agile cannot be done in silos. The company is only as agile as the least agile department. It takes collaboration and adopting continuous change and improvement with a learning mindset along each step of the journey. And we need to focus on human factors and behaviors. Type in the chat behavior. Now, the governance, the policies, the KPIs, all drives behavior. And that's what I meant earlier by outside forces that hinder the team. For example, what behavior are you driving when you give people promotions and salary increases based on their individual achievements, while you actually want people to work together as a team? Why not incentivize them in the behavior that you like to see? For example, going out of their way to help other teammates. That's the reward and recognition system. Oh, here's another one. How about when you need to provide all the answers at the end of each year for the entire following year, the budget, the roadmap, the resource plan, and you're required to jump through hoops whenever there are changes during the year, when we know the world changes rapidly in this 21st century? Oh, by the way, isn't that why Agile exists? Because we know things change? So instead of locking everything down and demanding a tight change control process, we develop a process that allows and incorporates changes. Remember 2020? Did anyone execute the 2020 plan that was planned out in Q4 of 2019? And yet, that's the annual corporate planning and budgeting process that most companies are doing now for 2024. Also, we all know that people need feedback to learn and grow. So when people do something right or when we see a right behavior, we want to make the consequence of that behavior positive, immediate, and certain, and then we'll see more of that behavior. Likewise, when people are doing something wrong or when we see undesired behavior, let them know as quickly as we can. And that way, they know not to do that again and what to do instead. So what are we doing to provide quick feedback to our teams instead of waiting for the annual or biannual performance review when we can barely remember what we did a couple of months ago? That's the current performance management system. Recently, one of my clients, a CEO and a founder, said he prefers hybrid working environment because he firmly believes that in order for the team to be productive and to have team spirit, the team has to work together face-to-face in person. However, he realized that requiring everyone to go to the office would upset his workforce. They're all knowledge workers. So he chose hybrid mode. Now, like my client, a lot of people in management positions today still act like they know best and tell the workers what to do, like what I asked you in the beginning. For example, thou shalt go back to the office, or we'll do hybrid, but you have to come in on these days, etc. They only make concessions to the employees because they are afraid they'll lose the talents like the great resignation or the quiet quitting that happened last year. Why not let the team decide? I mean, they are the ones doing the work anyways. They will know best how to work with each other to be most productive, which will include where and when they work. And that's the remote work policy. Now, there are many more governance policies and KPIs in the company, but I think you get the idea. However, if we have a people-first mindset, then it is not about how we want to run the company or how we want to manage our employees. It's not about our preferences or beliefs at all. It's about what would be best for our employees. And that is also what leadership means. Leadership is no longer about telling the employees what to do and monitoring their progress like a hawk. It is about creating and maintaining an environment where employees feel safe and motivated to contribute to their fullest. It's about answering the question, what can be done that would be best for my employees while achieving the goal? Oh, by the way, teams can be even more productive and have even more team spirit when they work remotely. Working remotely requires a whole new mindset and a brand new skill set because people have to change the way they communicate and collaborate completely. It takes unlearning and relearning, and sometimes it takes upskilling, and most of all, it takes intentionality. Now, when we change the way we manage work first, then the culture and work will change. And when I say culture, I mean beliefs, attitudes, behaviors. And when I say work, I mean procedures, rituals, roles, models, structure. Trying to change the culture and work directly is futile until you change the ways of managing first. We need to change the way we manage work in order to change the system of work, which will transform the way we work, which will then entrench itself in our culture. Attempts to make work agile or change culture on their own will fail. So, what am I saying? Focus on human factors and behaviors and create a people-first culture. My first boss cared about his team. He empathized with us and he created a physically and psychologically safe environment for his workers. By the way, one of the components of psychological safety, according to Dr. Amy Edmondson, is inclusion and diversity. And we need an inclusive environment in order to foster collaboration. Agile frameworks, practices, and ceremonies don't automatically guarantee that. In fact, according to the Business Agility Institute's DE&I report, DE&I, diversity, equity, and inclusion, is generally not considered a core aspect of agile ways of working. It takes intentionality, plus awareness and continuous learning and growing to make that happen. Now let's go back to my first boss. Not only did he care about us and create a safe environment for us, he also trusted us, his employees. All of those combined motivated his employees to work harder to earn his trust. He also gave us the authority to act within certain parameters which he made known and explained to us. He was also there to remove impediments and roadblocks that hindered our progress and our success. He was there to help us, not to lord over us. Contrasting with my second and third bosses, those were not safe environment, and as you already wrote in the chat earlier, that was a toxic environment. People were reprimanded for speaking up, so we didn't speak up anymore about anything. We also spent more time building walls to protect ourselves rather than building the product. There were no trust. We were told what to do, what not to do, and that we needed to stay in our lanes. We didn't collaborate with each other. When my boss accused me of wrongdoings that he routinely did himself, I knew he didn't care about me or empathize with me. I was only there to serve him, to get him to where he wanted to go in his career. I definitely felt that I was being lorded over and excluded. Now, you may realize that 21st century leadership is about people's skills. Type people's skills in the chat. Now, people also call these people's skills soft skills, though there's nothing soft about them. There's no correlation between how good you are at the job and how good a leader you are, because one is about doing the job and the other is about creating a space in which others are good at the job. So the best leaders have best EQ, emotional intelligence. The best leaders understand people's skills. They're good at listening. They're good at empathy. They're good at patience. They're good at creating a space in which they can help other people feel accountable. They believe in people. They practice trust, which means they trust first. All of these things require risk and patience. You find that the practices of good leadership very often are the practices of being a good human being. My first boss definitely had good people skills. Oh, by the way, some management rules by fear because they think it's good for employees to have some fear, as fear will propel people to work harder and better. What they don't understand is that management by fear only gives the illusion that goals are being met. In reality, it stifles innovation, creativity, and collaboration needed to respond to this complex and rapidly changing world that we call the 21st century. So, lead the people, don't manage them, meaning put people first and inspire and serve them, and manage the system, the governance, the policies, the KPIs, to allow people the freedom to act. Remember, bosses fix people while leaders fix environments. Do you know Peter Drucker, the father of modern management, actually said in the 1950s that a manager's job is to make common men do uncommon things, that a manager has the task of creating a true whole that is larger than the sum of its parts, and the manager is the dynamic, life-giving element in every business. I am curious, is that what you have experienced or are experiencing? Type in the chat yes if that's what you have experienced or are experiencing, and type no if your manager is not the dynamic, life-giving element in the business. Wow, that's quite a number of yeses. I'm very happy for you that you have such good managers. All right. There's some people who say no. Well, I was about to say, those of you who said yes, unfortunately, you're actually not the norm. You're quite the exception. A lot of people told me that they do not have bosses, as how Peter Drucker described it. So, what has changed between the 1950s and now? In the 1970s, an economist, Milton Friedman, theorized the responsibility of business is to maximize profit within the bounds of the law, which give rise to shareholder supremacy. Now, shareholder supremacy means we prioritize the wants and needs and desires of a shareholder over the needs of the customer or the employee. Milton's theory was popularized in the 1980s and 90s when businesses mostly rejected Peter Drucker's idea in the 1950s that the only purpose of a firm is to create a customer, and instead doubled down on the self-interest idea that the only purpose of a firm is to make money for the firm's shareholders. So we have been seeing the effect, the unintended byproducts of some of these management theories. We had the decline of trust. We had the decline of cooperation. We've even seen the decline of the lifespan of a business. In the 1950s, the average lifespan of business was over 60 years. Today, it's 18. Our interest became shorter and shorter term, and we've done damage to the kinds of quality of thinking and innovation that come out of organizations, which is always from people. The layoffs that started at the end of last year and continues through the first half of this year around the world is a good example of that. You can also look at my second and third bosses who sucked the life out of their workers, while my first boss cared about his team, and he was indeed the dynamic, life-giving element in the business, as Peter Drucker said. By the way, remember I wondered if there's a difference between commercial projects and government projects where everything is cutthroat and everyone is looking out for themselves in the commercial sector, while the competition is over and the project starts in the government sector? I found out that not all the teams in the government projects had such enjoyable working experiences. So it's not about the kind of project or the people in the project, but it's about the leader and the environment that the leader creates. Do you agree? Type leader in the chat if you agree that our work experience is dependent on the leader and the environment that the leader creates and not the type of projects or the people in the project. Oh, good. I'm glad you agree. Now, while we may not have bosses like our first boss, we all have to choose to be leaders we wish we had. I chose to be more like my first boss instead of my second and third bosses. I wish they were more like my first boss, but I couldn't change them. So we have to remember, we don't have to worry about affecting things we cannot affect. We have to worry about the people whose faces we recognize and whose names we know. We commit ourselves to seeing that those people love coming to work every day, that those people feel that someone has their back. That's where we have to start, looking after the people around us. It doesn't matter whether it's remote, hybrid, or completely in person. We have to do the hard work of creating a psychologically safe environment for our peers, and sometimes even those above us. Empathy can go up the chain of command. It doesn't just always go down. And that's especially important now that with all the layoffs that have happened. Leaders need to do the hard work to create a safe, trusting, open, and transparent environment for their remaining teams. You've probably heard enough to realize that Simon Sinek is correct, that leadership is not about being in charge. It is about taking care of those in our charge. That is the people around us whom we work with every day. And that's how leadership occurs from all levels. Leadership is also a choice. You don't have to be a leader if you don't want to, but leadership is definitely not a rank. Simply getting the promotion doesn't make you a leader. That just means you have authority and you're given more authority. The choice to become a leader means I now undertake the care of the human beings that are in my charge. I want to see them grow. I want to see them learn. I want to see the self-confidence built, and I want them to achieve more than they think they're capable of. The difference between leadership and authority is that leadership tells us why we're here in the first place. It reminds us why we came here. Authority tells us what to do and what goals to achieve. Remember, leaders are not responsible for the results. Leaders are responsible for the people who are responsible for the results. So put people first and create an environment where people can work at their natural best. The good thing is, leadership is a skill. It's a learnable, teachable, practicable skill. So learn how to make the lives of the people around you better, like how to listen well, how to ask questions, or how to give and receive feedback, how to have effective confrontations, how to discipline when necessary in a way that is constructive. Get to know people, care for them. When you ask someone, how are you? You actually care about the answer. If you don't care, don't ask. And just like any skill, learning is not enough. It takes practice. If you practice a lot of the little things that makes the lives of the people around you better, you get good at it. Now, I started this talk asking you what you think leadership is. I'll end with what Bridget Hyacinth said. I don't care whether you come into the office at 10 a.m. I don't care if you choose to work from home or not. I don't care if you work from the garage when they fix your car. We hired you to do a job, and I trust you to get it done. Just let me know what you need from me to be successful in your role, and I'll show up for you. Life happens. You don't need to justify to me why you need a day off. You don't need to explain how sick your child is to leave early. You don't need to apologize for having a personal life. Yes, I care about results, but I also care about you. We're all humans and we're all adults. I lead people. I don't run an adult daycare center. So, are you running an adult daycare center? Or are you a 21st century leader? Now, I know you all want to be a 21st century leader, otherwise, you won't be attending this talk right now. And after attending this talk, you know that being a leader is a journey and a spectrum. So, do you want to know where you are in the journey of being a 21st century leader? If you do, I'm inviting you to a special Agile Tour Vilnius session with me, 21st Century Leadership Mastery, your custom evaluation, where you will get a 30-minute call with me one-on-one. And at the end of the 30 minutes, you get an evaluation as to where you are in being a 21st century leader. Remember I said earlier that being a 21st century leader has two elements. First, your people are enabled to work at their natural best and can contribute to the fullest. And second, your systems allow people the freedom to act. So you get an evaluation as to where you are on both of those parts. Now, after the evaluation, we'll decide together your next course of action. So you know exactly what you need to tackle next to establish and maintain an environment where employees feel safe and motivated to contribute to the fullest. Now, normally I charge US $495 for such sessions, but since you joined my talk today, I'm offering this free, but only for the next 7 days. So click the URL and book the session now. I'm actually going to put the URL in the chat. Thank you so much for listening so attentively and participating when I asked you to type in the chat. I'd love to connect with all of you, and my contact information is on the slide, and I'm putting it in the chat as well. Oh, in case you're interested, I'm also giving you the link to the slides for today's talk. Thank you. Oh, before we go to Q&A, may I ask you one more question? Did you notice I asked you to type in chat for two different types of things? The first type is I asked you open questions and you need to think to answer. And the second are words that I told you to type. What do you think? Which one do you like better? Type first if you like the open questions that you need to think to answer. And type second if you like to type the words I told you to. So first or second? Okay, open, first, open. Okay. More people like first than second. There are some seconds. Okay. Well, do you realize that I actually demonstrated the two types of leaders in this talk? The first is more inclusive, asking open questions, getting your feedback. And the second, while the words I asked you to type are to enforce your learning concepts like people first, behavior, people skills, but I did that like what some leaders do, telling their people what to do. So how did you feel about that? Type in the chat and let me know. And in the meantime, well, don't forget to sign up for your free 21st Century Leadership Mastery custom evaluation sessions. And with that, let's open the floor for Q&A.
Okay. Really, thank you very much for the presentation. Let's see, maybe someone wants to even turn on their microphones and ask the question, or you can just leave in the chat the questions. I'm also gonna check if Hova has any questions for you.
Wow, no questions? This is all clear?
Anyone?
So you know exactly what to do now?
Go
I mean, I
go
know.
join the link.
I mean, I
Get the
know I'm good.
session.
I didn't realize I'm that good.
I have a question for you. From like a perspective of like what's coming up, like in the future. Do you see any kind of like trends or anything that's where the leadership or like managers are gonna be like moving in the future? Because it's the start of 21st century, but it's changing so fast. Like, do you see any upcoming like after the COVID trends?
Well, that's a very good question. And it's not just also COVID, but we need to realize that there are actually five generations in the workplace today. Um, and obviously, the people in the senior management positions are the older generation, and they are at an age where they are retiring. And we have a lot more younger generation, Generation Z, is actually coming into the workplace. And so the trend that I see is actually quite interesting. Um, the older generation, you would have thought that they are usually have the mindset and they are expecting a certain way. Yeah, sure, we absolutely have people like that, but there are also a number of them that are quite open. Again, the key is really when you care about your team, then the focus is on how you can make your team work more effectively together, and that you are will be really wanting to learn, and you will grow that way. And I have met a lot of older actually managers who actually tell me, Mun-Wai, this remote thing and this hybrid thing, I mean, I'm not used to this. So how can I be available for my team? And I am very encouraged by those questions, because that means they are curious and they want to learn and they want to better themselves. Now, younger generation, you would have thought that they will be more open-minded, that they have different wants and needs, and that is true. But then the youngest, actually, for example, Gen Z, they actually want, for example, go back to the office more than, let's say, Gen X, because they wanted the structure, they wanted to see people, they wanted to have the sense of community that they can actually sense, they can actually see. You would have thought that that generation grew up in the digital world, right? Everything is online. They will not go anywhere without their phone. They should be perfectly fine. But turns out it's not. So it's actually quite interesting to actually see the some of the things that are quite unexpected. So I am not that good in looking into the future and predicting the future. So I cannot tell you what trends I would be able to see into the future. But I think that one thing for sure is when people are caring about their teams, whatever generation you are, whatever COVID or remote, hybrid, whatever else that the world throw at us, whatever the future brings, as long as the leader cares about their team, they will always be looking for ways to learn and to upskill themselves so that they can better serve the team. And that's what we're really looking for and what really hope for. I don't know if that
Yeah,
answers your question.
it
Sorry.
did. It did. I think like it's a very interesting fact that Gen Z wants to come back to the office. I never thought that they would want to.
I was surprised when I heard that. I say, what? What's
Yeah,
wrong? Wait, don't you
yeah.
just work on your phone or something?
They're just so digitalized like that. It doesn't like it kind of makes sense for them to want to for them not
Exactly.
to care about the office at all. But it's nice that they do care about the office and they want to come back for this like in-person connection. So that's great. Um, I don't see any other questions.